Good afternoon, Oak Grove. Happy Thursday. Welcome to this week's installment of the Midweek Update series here on the church's YouTube channel, where I just pop into your devices in the middle of the week to say hello and just keep the church on our mind for the rest of the week that we're not in worship on Sunday morning, because that is such an important thing for us to do. So thanks for taking a minute of your day to join me on here. Coming to you from the sanctuary here and rocking some of my new Oak Grove swag that we just picked up recently in recent weeks here at the church. What am I going to talk to you about today? I talked last week about how, the virus that I caught, that I struggled with for a couple of weeks, impacted my vacation plans. And I'm going to continue to carry that conversation through to start today's discussion a little bit and talk about the fact that I was scheduled to go out of town for a conference. Well, I call it a conference, Monday through Wednesday this week that I'm making this. The Synod calls it Theological Convocation, and it is basically just an annual retreat for the pastors in our Synod, where they go away to the Antiochian Retreat Center in Greensburg and just have 3 days off to relax and to connect with colleagues. And there's a keynote speaker there who teaches a little mini course during the week. That's why they call it Theological Convocation. And our own Pastor Bill has provided the music for worship for the last 3 years. Thank you, Bill, for doing that for the Synod. And I was looking forward to going. I have not gone to one yet since I've been ordained, because they offer it in October every year. And every single year, something has popped up to derail it for one reason or another. And this year, what derailed it was that I was still not feeling too great as of Monday morning. I felt like I was improving from this virus earlier last week, and then I started to go downhill again later in the week, and I didn't feel up to it Monday morning. I was able to lead worship here Sunday morning only because I popped a whole bunch of cold medication, and of course I masked up during communion to be safe, and I didn't shake anybody's hands for the sharing of the peace, but I still wasn't really well on Sunday, and I ended up going to urgent care and got an antibiotic, and I'm starting to feel a bit better this week, but I stayed home from convo, and that's disappointing, but it is what it is. And I will just reiterate the message that I shared last week about making lemons from lemonade, and sometimes life presents you with things that weren't what you chose, but they're what you got. And so this week has been somewhat restful for me, simply because I didn't schedule any meetings or any visits because I thought I would be over at Convo. Well, as it turned out, since I was home, I had a fairly light schedule for this week, and so I've been able to take some of that time to sit at home and rest up, and hopefully that has helped me continue to move on from this virus a bit and really kick it, I hope. I don't think it's a virus anymore. I think it's more of a bacterial thing at this point, because the antibiotics are helping a little bit. Anyway, I've already rambled about that more than I intended to, and you know that I'm good at doing that here on this channel. I'm going to take that conversation and now move it forward and shift into talking about the meaning of life a little bit. I told you that whenever I come on here and don't otherwise have something else scheduled that I'm going to talk about, I will usually give you a selection from the daily lectionary readings, right? And one of the daily readings appointed for today is one of my favorite passages in the entire Bible, and it might seem like a strange one, that comes to us from the book of Acts in chapter 17. Paul is witnessing before a group of Greeks, and it reads, "Paul stood in front of the Areopagus and said, 'Athenians, I see how extremely spiritual you are in every way. For as I went through the city and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I found among them an altar with the inscription, "To an unknown God." What you therefore worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, he who is Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in shrines made by human hands, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mortals life and breath and all things. From one ancestor he made all peoples to inhabit the whole earth, and he allotted the times of their existence and the boundaries of the places where they would live, so that they would search for God and perhaps fumble about for him and find him, though indeed he is not far from every one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as even some of your own poets have said, for we too are his offspring. Since we are God's offspring, we ought not to think that the deity is like gold or silver or stone, an image formed by the art and imagination of mortals. While God has overlooked the times of human ignorance, now he commands all people everywhere to repent, because he has fixed a day on which he will have the world judged in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed. And of this he has given assurance to all by raising him from the dead. So, sometimes people will kind of jokingly say to pastors, "Pastor, what's the meaning of life?" Yeah, well, that's, no pressure to find an answer to the little questions there. But honestly, I think that in this little passage here that St. Paul gives us here today, Paul basically captures it in a very simple way right here. God made stuff, including us. Why did God make stuff? God made stuff because before there was stuff, there was nothing. And God pre-existed everything from all eternity. And as far as we can tell, as far as we can grasp within our limited human understanding, God was quote-unquote lonely. Now, to say that God was lonely is assigning anthropomorphic qualities to God that are probably pretty difficult to make one-to-one direct comparisons with human beings in that sense. But in some sense that is beyond our simple human understanding of it, God wanted a people because God was lonely. God wanted to give and receive love with us. God made stuff for us, and then God made us so that we may live among the stuff that God created, and that we may give and receive love with God and one another. And so honestly, I think hidden in this passage here where Paul is preaching to a bunch of Greeks at the Areopagus, I think Paul basically gives us, in my opinion, the meaning of life, all we really need to know right here. Why did God do all these things? From one ancestor, he made all peoples to inhabit the whole earth, and he allotted the times of their existence and the boundaries of the places where they would live, so that they would search for God and perhaps fumble about for him. I love the use of that word fumble, and find him, though indeed he is not far from each one of us. What is the purpose of life? The purpose of life is to return to the source of life. The meaning of life is for us to find the one who made us in everything that we do. This Saturday, we are celebrating the installation of Bishop Stoller at Berkeley Hills Lutheran Church, and I was very glad that I got my name in before the registration closed to sing in the choir for Bishop Stoller's installation, and I'm very much looking forward to it. But because of this lovely illness that I've had for the last few weeks, I missed the choir practice that they had scheduled, not last weekend, but the weekend before that. And I can tell you that one of the places where I find God most clearly in my life is in music. And so I love what this passage says here about fumbling to find God. Where do we find God? We find God in all kinds of places in our lives. I find God in music. I find God in art, although Paul puts down the idea of God being contained in art here. But even there, what Paul is doing is Paul is kind of speaking to the basic human need and tendency to try to capture God in our artistic expressions, to try to capture God in poetry and painting and sculpture. The purpose of life is to seek God. The purpose of life is to return to the one who made us, because we were created for fellowship with him. And so we find God wherever it is that we are able to find God. What is the purpose of life for you today? What is the meaning of life for you today? The purpose of your life today is to find God in whatever places you can find God. I'm thrilled that I can sing with the choir for Bishop Stoller's installation, but I wasn't able to practice my music for the last couple of weeks because I've been sick. Well, this week I've been starting to practice again, and I've been moved to tears by how beautiful are the anthems that were chosen for her installation. And there's a moment where I find God in my day. You find God wherever you need to find God in your day. Many of you here watching this, many folks at Oak Grove are very outdoorsy people who spend a lot of your time in the outdoors. Maybe you find God in the beauty of creation. Maybe you find God outside. Maybe if you're an avid reader, you find God in poetry and prose. You find God wherever you need to find God in your life. And we'll also find God in the acts of service that we do to those around us, where we show the love of God to the people in our lives. And it's especially important for us to keep looking for God exactly in those moments in human history where we turn on the evening news and we see the hatred and the toxicity in our country and the partisanship that causes our political parties to butt heads such that we can't seem to reopen our government, and or the hatred that causes people to think that an appropriate way to act out on their political frustration is to assassinate people they don't agree with in broad daylight. Or we watch the images of the bombs falling in the Ukraine or in Gaza, and we watch the images of human suffering there, and we wonder, where is God? It is all the more important then to keep fumbling for God, as St. Paul just said. I love the way that that's put, to fumble around looking for God. Because that is what human beings do in our search for God. We're never going to find him exactly. We're never going to capture a precise image of the divine in this life. Not until we meet God face to face will we know exactly what God's nature is like. And even then, it will only be a gift from God if we're able to comprehend it, because it is beyond what we'll ever be able to understand. But the meaning of life in this world is to fumble around in this human existence as best we can to find every last connection we possibly can with the Almighty who made us, and to reconnect with the source and ground of all being, wherever he appears in our lives, whether that's in music or in art, whether it is in the comfort of a good friend, whether it's in the fellowship of family among good food, whether it is here at our church family singing our favorite hymns or listening to pastors' boring sermons on Sunday morning because maybe somebody does get something out of them. Wherever you find God, you have to make sure you connect with the divine every single day, or we will be lost without that one who made us. And when we see those images of hatred and suffering and violence on the evening news, we're not going to have any spiritual energy with which to keep our spirits up and be able to take heart and face each day with the courage that we need to face it, unless we reconnect with God every day. So what's the meaning of life? The meaning of life is to fumble around, as Paul said, to find God wherever God is appearing. And for some of us, that even needs to happen when we've been sick and we haven't been able to find God the ways that we usually like to, but we have to find other ways to do that. I have been babbling long enough now, Oak Grove. That's what I have for you today, based on the daily lectionary and based on current events in my life and in the world. I will see you for worship this coming Sunday. Please do tune in to the Synod's Facebook page, if you can, on Saturday, and check out Bishop Stoller's installation. If you're not going to be able to be there in person, I would love for you to be able to do that. I'll see you on Sunday, Oak Grove. Thanks. Take care. God bless. Have a wonderful rest of your week.